Agrenaisha Korja. My name is Paul Cunningham, and welcome back to the fourth day of IST-Africa 2022. We're now starting our second session on technology-enhanced learning, and this morning we're going to start with Martin's presentation on development of the Greenwell and Matongo Community Library Management Information System.
Jude. My name is Mabeifam Ujakpa from Ghana Communications Technology University. I'd like to present the research with the topic of development of the Greenwell Matongo Community Library Management Information System on behalf of myself, Jude Osakwe from Namibia University of Science and Technology, Gloria Iyawa from Namibia University of Science and Technology, Yalova Nganja from the International University of Management, Valerianos Ashiana from the University of Namibia, and Gift Nosipho from the International University of Management. So the motivation and the problem areas that led us to conduct this research was that we found out that the library still practice a time-consuming library task, such as manual book research, that could be harmful to the book's lifespan. And we also found out that these same tasks were overwhelming, they were tiring, they were unreliable and inconvenient to the librarians. The library users seem to visit the library in person in order to inquire about the availability of the books and the status of the books. We also found out that the manual library system appeared to be vulnerable to human errors. There was a lot of possibility of redundancy and duplication of data. And we've also found out that the loss of paper record in the event of a disaster was a reality, as there was no way that same information would be backed up. The borrowed books were not returned. There was no proper tracking of the borrowed books. So there was always a challenge of accountability of the library users that borrowed the book. There was no way librarians would know, or there was little information about the borrowers. So the research objectives of this research was that upon completion of the research, a developed community library management information system would enable users to automate the library resources, to search library materials such as book online, to make online book requests, to track borrowed books, returns, and allow the payment of fees online, generate reports, and to make book suggestions online. As for the methodology used in this research, us as the research team, we decided that the prototype methodology was the most suitable method of development to be used in this research, as it enabled the developers to gain insight and inputs from the library managers, users, and how the manual system works. So the prototype also helped users to understand what they really wanted. And the instrument of research was a semi-structured interview. The interview enabled researchers to get users' detailed requirements. As for the population of this research included the members of the Greenwell Community Library. And in these members, we had librarians, we had borrowers or library users, the head librarian, and the IT administrator. And we had 50 members as a sample size, and the sample method that we used to get to this figure was the point of saturation. The technology description, we have the use case diagram, which shows the interaction between the system users and the various processes of the system. We have, as the diagram illustrates, we have 4 users. We have the IT admin, we have the head librarian, the librarian, and the library users. And we have processes on which all these users are taking part. So on the first process is the account registration. All the users in the system have a role to play on account registration. They can all register. And then we have the book management, whereby only the staff in the system have the authority to do book management. And the staff are the IT admin, the head librarian, and the librarians. So the library users, as the external users of the library, do not have access to this functionality. Then we have book transactions, whereby all the users of the system have access to, but the IT admin. Then we have search management, whereby all the users have access to. Then we have the payment, whereby all the users have access to. Then we have suggestions of books, whereby all the users also take part in this process. Then we have the events, whereby all the users also take part in this process. Then we have the generation of reports, whereby only the library staff take part in this process. The next technology description, we have the user interface, whereby it illustrates the automated library records, including the available number of books, the registered library users, issued and retained resources. So this is a dashboard, and is presented to the user, the admin user, as soon as the admin logs in. So the admin is able to see the kind of a statistical indication of how many available library resources there is, or issued resources, or registered users are in the system. The next technology description, we have a figure which demonstrates the system allowing the admin to perform search for desired resources or information by entering search parameters or phrase or words in the search text field. So this is a page in the system whereby users can simply type the name of the book, or the description of the book, or the name of the author of the book, and they will be able to easily find where the book is and in which section of the library the book is and how to get there. Major outcomes of this research. As a result of this research, we have developed a library system which automated the library resources and processes, including book information, library material search, such as book, library users, book request, tracking of borrowed books and return, online payment for late returns or lost notebooks, and the generation of reports and book suggestions. The system will of course benefit the library stakeholder, as it allows them to undertake the most library services online without necessarily walking to the library. Thus, the reducing of the manual library services will speed up services and the response time, reducing the human error. In conclusion, we noticed that developed library automated the library records by allowing library resource search, by allowing online book requests, by enabling librarians to track borrowed and returned books, by also allowing online payment of fees and book suggestions so the librarians to use when they get interlibrary loan books. As recommendation in future work, the research team recommends that future researchers should consider adding the following functionality to the system: the scanning of barcodes in books and notification via SMS to the library users. User assessment of the system, different from the system testing, should also be carried out to examine the system's performance. Thank you so much, everyone, for sticking around from the start to the end of this presentation. And thank you, IST-Africa, for giving us the opportunity to present our research on this notorious platform. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Martin. Can you describe, first of all, why it was necessary to implement a new library management information system, as many such systems exist? What feedback has been received by different key stakeholders to date? And how do you propose to optimize the use of the resources to create this in the first case in terms of potential scaling, either in situ or in other libraries nearby? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Prof, for the question. Firstly, we decided to go ahead with the development of this system because if you look at the community in which that library is located, it's not a very big community. It is more of those who know Windhoek in Namibia. That particular location is made up of, there are more slums in that area compared to a usual city where. So if you look at the two cities that had the collaboration, in terms of bringing the library, it was supposed to serve such a setting. So existing library systems are actually built usually for very large established libraries. This is not a very big library. Sorry about that. This is not a very big library. And in terms of bringing in those established systems that are done for established libraries, there were some of the functionalities that didn't fit in properly then we needed to redo some functionalities. So instead of bringing in a system from outside to implement, we rather felt let's rather build a library system that is more customized based on the settings of the that environment. And that is why we decided to build this from scratch. But also considering that this could be implemented in other libraries, we actually included other functionalities that they don't use currently, which could be scaled. When we implement this into other library systems, it could still fit in there. So if you realize in our recommendations, we mentioned some missing items that we're actually currently working on in terms of the barcode canning. So we're able to build the barcode canning back into, because currently it doesn't do that. We rather need to put in things like the ISBN number. It's not able to scan the barcode. So in terms of scaling up, we'll do some additional features into it, like SMS. It's not able to send automatic SMS unless somebody send manual SMS. So we built it in context of the particular library that we're looking at, because the other existing systems were not fitting exactly into that library. But we also opened up by adding additional functionalities that allows for scaling up as well. Thank you.
And what feedback have been received by different stakeholders? So both on the librarian side, but also on the customer-facing side.
Okay, from the librarian side, we did get feedback as part of the prototypes that were released. Is through the feedback that we made some improvements to release the current prototype that's available. But from the customer side, we haven't made any feedback. And that is why in the recommendation, the last recommendation, we did mention that we needed to get some user feedback. So it has not been rolled out for users to make use of at the moment. It's just at the prototype phase. So until we roll out, customer feedback has not been received. But librarians' feedback has been received and used in adjusting the system to get it to the current prototype in which it is. But we intend doing that as well. And that is part of the ongoing work on it.
Thanks, Martin. If no one has any questions or comments, and I don't see anything in the chat, and I don't see any hands up, Martin, thank you very much. And we're moving on to Nosipho's presentation on impact of social media on students' academic performance in higher education institutions.
Good day. My name is Nosipho Mavuso from Sisulu University, and I'll be taking you through a study that I did with two of my colleagues, Asipe and Keinde, both from Sisulu University, whereby we looked at the impact of social media on students' academic performance in a higher education institution. So what the study mainly wanted to look at is, with the current use of social media, so now if it is being incorporated in teaching and learning, so now what are some of the challenges and what are some of the benefits that you can actually get from that? So we have here the presentation overview. So these are the key points that I'll be taking you through the presentation, where we'll look at the motivation of the study, the significance, the research objectives, the research methodology, some of the major outcomes and results that we received from the study. Then we'll also look at the conclusion. So as already stated, that we have seen quite a rapid use in terms of social media, especially throughout the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, where we were all now forced in a way to depend on technology and to communicate with different relatives and friends across the globe through using social media. So now we're just simply saying that the very same social media that we have been using also has picked up in terms of its usage when it comes to teaching and learning within institutions of higher learning. So now what the study wanted to see is, now that we have seen the benefits of social media, we do know the benefits that are already there. Now, when it comes to them being integrated into teaching and learning, it is also quite important that we acknowledge that they are not always correlated with beneficial results. So in as much as they are good, they do provide quite a number of benefits. However, there are certain challenges that we also need to look into and consider. So now when it comes to the significance of the study, so what the study mainly wanted to do was to highlight the impact that social media has on academic life of students within higher education. So we also looked at what are some of the negative and positive factors that are actually there when we incorporate social media into our day-to-day teaching and learning. So now, one important thing as well is knowing that social networking is something that is still going to be here. So it's also important that we know how to use it in a way that cannot be harmful to us as users. So it's quite important that we see how it can be utilized and make sure that every individual actually benefits from the social networking sites that they are using. So now looking at the objectives of the study, firstly, it was to mainly understand the positive impacts that are there, that are associated with using social media as a medium of teaching and learning. Then secondly, it was also to establish any possible challenges that are faced by learners when social media is used for teaching and learning. And then also it is to provide any possible recommendations that can be given in order to enhance teaching and learning through the use of social media as a medium of education. So now looking at the research methodology, so the study took interpretivism research paradigm, and it was mixed methods that were used, and it was a survey of an institution in the Eastern Cape province, which is Sisulu University. So now when it comes to the quantitative data, So now we're saying that quantitative findings were used to actually show how social media positively impacts teaching and learning, including the challenges that were encountered throughout the whole process. Then now with the qualitative side, and the qualitative analysis, it showed some of the impact and challenges that we were unable to actually get through the quantitative part of the questionnaire, where we looked now at the students' views and suggestions. So for our data collection, we used a data collection tool. We used distributed questionnaires, whereby initially they were distributed to 120 students, and we only got 100 that were returned. And now this led us to a response rate of 83.3%. So the questionnaires were distributed throughout the different levels from first year up until the final year. So now just to look at some of the findings that we actually had for the study. So findings presented here are on the impact of social media in teaching and learning, which were reflected by all the students from entry level to the final year of their study. So what was discovered was that the students actually said that lecturers use Blackboard, WhatsApp, and Google Plus as one of the leading social media platforms that they use for teaching and learning. So what we have here is just some of the, I would say, the key results that we picked from the paper itself. So here is an example again of where students were asked to say, does or rather social media, does it actually help with the completion of tasks? So they said that social media helps quickly complete school tasks such as assignments, exercises, and tests. So now the results actually show that students actually do not agree that social media actually helps them complete their tasks more quickly. So we see that 30% they strongly disagree that social media does actually help them complete their tasks. Again, one key component that we looked at was social media and how it improves academic performance. So yeah, worth noting is the high number of respondents who said that they actually indicated that social media actually does help improve in terms of their academic performance. Okay, but then worth noting is also such positive impacts are not uniformly distributed across all the students. So it's not all students who actually feel that their academic performance is improved through social media being used for teaching and learning. So shown here again is some of the questions that were also asked to say that social media distracts teaching and learning. So there is actually quite a high number of students who actually agree that social media does distract them from the normal teaching and learning, because now the very same social media platforms that they have known or that they have been using for social interaction, now suddenly there is this switch that is supposed to happen, whereby they're supposed to now use the very same platforms for their academic work, which now they actually say that it does distract them a bit. And then social media interrupts their study time. A high number again actually agree that it does disrupt their study time. And one interesting thing would be, for some, it can be a distraction in the sense that whatever notification that you get, you might be thinking that it is possibly something that is academic related, only to find that it's possibly a friend who is actually sending you a text message. So it's actually quite a predicament that the learners find themselves in, because in as much as you want to study, but then you might also be thinking that they might be a communication that has been made through possibly the class WhatsApp group. So you will definitely check from time to time. So part of the questionnaire also had open-ended questions, whereby this is now where we actually got the actual views of the learners themselves. So now, for example, most of the participants support the view that social media provides main advantages to its users, because it allows students to communicate with one another during teaching and learning. So now, these are just some of the views that the respondents had, whereby they were actually saying that it is quite good because some learners are actually shy when it comes to asking questions. So in a normal face-to-face type of teaching and learning environment, some learners might not openly ask or express themselves. However, when it's now online, where there is a discussion, or rather there is a question that is posed on the discussion board, most learners have actually found it easy for them to actually respond and interact, because they are there anonymously, so no one is actually seeing them, or they can't even get to hear what comments their colleagues will possibly make about their responses or their questions. So now the virtual learning media allows students to ask their lecturers for clarity at any time. So now this is where we say that social media does allow the 24/7 teaching and learning approach, whereby you have access to your lecturer and to your learning content at any time and any way. And then also one key component when it comes to the facilitation of teaching and learning online is the resources. So in this case, we looked at the provision of laptops as one of the requirements that actually allows for easier teaching and learning. So now some of the students actually said that many of the students do not have laptops, and during this COVID pandemic era, the university should provide students with laptops. So this is one of the challenges that was encountered by numerous institutions of higher learning, whereby we now had to take an online approach to teaching and learning. However, in some instances, it's not all students who have access to those resources. So now, yes, there is the suggestion that students should be provided with laptops for them to learn. Okay. Then also the issue of cost came through in terms of when it comes to them using social media for teaching and learning, because it requires a lot of data and constant electricity. So this is actually one of the challenges that was voiced out by the students, to say that the use of social media needs much more money to buy data, and some of us are poor and were left out in this teaching and learning process. So these are just some of the from the students. So now, in conclusion, it is to simply say that social media does provide benefits in terms of facilitating teaching and learning. However, there are challenges that also need to be taken into consideration. Then now the study did make some recommendations whereby we're simply saying that there should be a creation of accessible content that students can use, and also the initiative of providing laptops and students to use. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and this is the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nosipho. One of the interesting things that I'd like to explore is this seeming contradiction between the positives and negatives. So of using social media in teaching and learning from the student's perspective. So what, from your point of view, were some of the unexpected or unintended consequences of leveraging social media in teaching and learning? And perhaps you could discuss this briefly from the institutional perspective, from the educator's perspective, and then from the student's perspective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your question. Please repeat the last part for me to say.
Of course. So could you discuss some of the unexpected or unanticipated consequences of leveraging social media in teaching and learning from three perspectives: from the institutional perspective, from the educator or teacher's perspective, and then from the student perspective? Thanks.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you so much for your question, and a good afternoon. Yes, so surprisingly, so as you asking for the unexpected positives that we actually discovered through the study, was one of the I will say the benefits that was cited by the students. Firstly, in terms of them actually learning online, was them being able to have access to content and being able to have access to their lecturers, meaning anytime you can pretty much be able to ask a lecturer at any time to say, I'm struggling with this, and then possibly you are able to get the response in that regard, to say that anytime the educators are easily available and they're easily accessible. Then from a lecturer's point of view, or from an educator's point of view, I would possibly say that one of the benefits would be the ability to actually explore and share quite a lot with the learners, because one of the things that we saw during this whole online learning is the limited time that we unfortunately have together online. So now this actually now pushes you even further to say, let me get this particular article, let me get this notes, let me do this, so that you can at least share as much as you can with the learners, so that they can do their reading on their own most of the time, because we can't spend as much hours of teaching online as we would in a case of a face-to-face situation. So it actually now makes you more diverse in terms of how best can you actually teach and share the content with the learners. And then from an institutional point of view, I would say it is possibly, again, allowing institutions to make use of such resources. Like, for example, there are learning management systems that are there within different institutions. However, you would find that in a normal face-to-face learning and teaching environment, then you would hardly make use of those LMSs. But then now with the online approach, then we are forced to make use of these resources that have always been there, but they were not used to their maximum and to their best advantage. So I would say those are the benefits that have been identified.
Okay. Thanks, Nafisa. So the issue that comes to my mind is that essentially it can have benefits, but it also puts additional pressure on both the student in terms of feeling the social pressure of needing to have a laptop or being concerned that they don't have the same amount of bandwidth as perhaps somebody who's got a more middle class background and their parents can support them. And also perhaps more higher expectations on the teachers because they are expected to be more responsive. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm just saying it's something that needs to be thought through. So do you want to comment on that? And then I think Martin's got a question as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, definitely. I do agree. There were quite a lot of expectations, and there were possibly gaps that were there that maybe we might have not seen or identified up until a time like this, whereby it's almost like we would have the same umbrella, or would possibly think that students, they come from pretty much the same environment, where when you are giving them a task or you have an expectation on their end, it's almost like you would expect everyone to be able to do it without being cognizant of the idea that possibly not every learner has a laptop, and possibly a student could have run out of data during the course of the month, and they still have to attend classes. So I think then as students, it pretty much taught them a lot in terms of possibly managing their time and managing their data well, because now you know that, okay, I can't just simply go onto YouTube and start listening and watching videos when I still need to use the very same data to still attend classes. So I think it actually helped them in that sense as well, to say, let's rather try and make sure that we use these resources quite well.
Thanks for that. Martin, you had a comment.
Yes, Prof, it's a comment, not a question. I think just to add on to what the researcher has presented, social media, it has, just like you commented, also, it has both negatives and positives. And the fact is, I don't think we can stay away from this, considering that online learning has come to stay with us. And the pandemic made this even more clearer or more clearer. These students will be using internet, even in our absence as educators. They would stay, wouldn't be with them when they are joining online sessions. So the ability of them to still join social media whilst teaching is ongoing is very high, considering the 4 IR in which we are now. So I think going forward, maybe the researcher or maybe other researchers could possibly look at how do we maximize social media use and then minimize social media use. Maybe some further research may need to be done that into the future in terms of how we find a way to demotivate students from using social media during teaching and learning time, and then maximize use of teaching and learning resources during teaching and learning time. So just a comment on it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Martin. I mean, the other thing to think about is that maybe we need to segment social media a bit more than we currently do, because when I hear people talk about social media, I don't automatically think of WhatsApp, for example, or even Google+. I think of Facebook and, Twitter. And, I think a lot of people might also have those images in their mind. So we might want to think about how we use language, because actually what we're talking about is cross-platform or facilitated learning type environments. And that isn't really what Facebook or Twitter are doing. And from your own research, Nosipho, it looks like those were marginal usages at all. The other thing I'd like us to think about is social engineering. So in the healthcare field, for example, there's a similar challenge to that in education, insofar as many health facilities in rural and deep rural environments don't have access to necessary infrastructure, or even if they do, they could run out of budget for bandwidth, for example, in a couple of days that's supposed to last them a month. So, and you correctly talked about people taking responsibility in terms of managing available resources. But similarly, in a health context, people may be loaned equipment to track a very serious illness, for example, over a period of time. And then there may be an expectation that even though they're supposed to give it back, they may not want to give it back. Similarly, in an educational context, I know in some countries, and maybe it depends on available resources, and in some institutions, a laptop is part of the package that students get when they go into first year. But I think we need to manage expectations that that is a community resource. In other words, it's not something that the student should feel it's theirs and they can do whatever they want with it and they don't have to look after it if they don't want to. And they should be aware that it is a community resource that would be expected to be passed on to the students that need it when they don't need it anymore. So again, just something to think about. So thank you very much for that. That was very interesting. The next presentation is by Martin and Aussie, and it's on School Management Information System for the Elite College.
Good day, everyone. We are here to present our research paper titled School Management Information System for the Elite College. Education system form the backbone of every nation and are more and more accessible through information and communication technology. A specific ICTs through which education has become more accessible include information management systems and learning management technologies. Notwithstanding the said opportunities brought by ICTs to the education, it seems that some schools have not taken advantage of it and for some reason have delayed in taking advantage. The elite college currently use a manual system to keep learners' information. Thus, to access information, parents and teachers may have to go to the school physically or make phone calls. And records of this seem to get lost from time to time. As a result of the lack of an school management information system in the elite college, students wait in a long queues during registration period. Lecturers complain of time lost during the first weeks of the semester as the students are registering. And this statement was supported by other researchers who found that teaching and learning time is lost during first weeks of registration as a student will be registering in that period. With the current manual registration system, the possibility of students getting tired and stressed up as a result of waiting in a long queue existed. Our research objective. This project aimed at developing a school management information system for the elite college that allows the students' registration, students' access to their personal and academic information, which are timetables, upcoming events, marks, transcripts, academic records, and financial statement, and online fees payment. This system can easily be customized and adapted by various institutions without a school management information system. As a research approach, the project applied the prototyping as a software development method. The reason is because the developer found this methodology to be more flexible and adapted to the system requirement change, thus enabling the developers to redefine the scope of the system under development. The instrument used to guide the information was interview, and subjective information on the system requirement was gathered from the users. And the population from which the system requirement was gathered is the elite college. Additionally, the population consisted of learners, teachers, school administrators, and parents. Therefore, the system requirement was gathered from 30% as the point of saturation was reached on this number. And the tools used to develop this system was Visual Studio Platform for coding. And this platform was chosen because of being a free source that comes with a built-in support for JavaScript, Node.js, PHP, and as a rich ecosystem of extension for other programming language. Technology description. As a system design, we see figure 1 illustrates the context level diagram that was designed towards the system development, and figure 2 illustrates the use case diagram that shows interaction between the system users and the various processes of the system. And on the figure 3 illustrates the home page of the developed elite school management information system, where we can see main tabs, where we can see home tab, manage student tab, manage teacher tab, manage parent tab, and more tabs. As you say, messager admin, which means the admin is which means the admin. This project succeeded in designing and developing the school management information system for the elite college, Namibia. And the developed system allows a student registration, online fees payment, students' parents access to personal records such as social, academic, and financial records, academic information, which include timetable, upcoming event, marks, transcript, academic record, financial statement. During the development, we learned some lessons, and we have learned that when we involved the users in design, the implementation became faster. Resistance to change was reduced, and the implementation was faster. There are some benefits which are business benefits. The developed system will benefit the school administrators, students, as the both student and the school administration will be able to carry out their roles as highlighted in the objectives. The developed system is beneficial to the school and the community as well. The implementation of the system will benefit the school as it opens up new advertised channels for the schools, hence some revenue that can be used to maintain the school management information system. The school management information system also opens up opportunity for the business community, since hosting service will be required in addition, support service for the system will be required. In addition to using ICT to support the objectives, there will be an increase in the purchase of ICT equipment by various stakeholders because of the implementation of the system. As our conclusion, the project's main objective and sub-objectives were achieved as the project developed the school management information system. And beginning next academic year, budget deployment of the system will begin, and by the second semester, full implementation will be underway. the recommendation future work. The developed system could not integrate the SMS, which short message service, and the email functionality, and this functionality can be incorporated in the new version. Future development can add a section for alumni, business incubation for school management information system, web marketing to generate income for the various school, and develop IT support service for the school which adopt the system. Thank you so much.
So Martin, can you talk about these potential advertising channels that were referred to and the potential to create revenue to maintain the system?
All right, Prof, thank you so much. Prof, this system, uniquely, the reason for building this, because there are existing school management systems, but most of the existing school management systems are for colleges or maybe levels below colleges like secondary schools, maybe not too many. But this particular college we are talking about is like an intermediate college between the secondary schools and then the colleges or universities. And systems don't usually exist. There are not many systems existing for that level. So this level is more like those who do some additional classes for students who are not able to make it direct from the secondary school to the colleges. So with building such a system for them, they actually go beyond just running the normal business functions of a school. Like elite college, they do additional things. So they could place advertisement on that system as well for other activities they carry out beyond their normal school activities. And that is why we felt that needed, that was a benefit for the school as well. It's not just like a normal senior high school or a normal university or college. It's an intermediate between them. And they had additional functionality, additional things they did. And that is why we brought in that point there as part of the system benefiting.
Yeah, thank you. And then I suppose it's feature and bug time. If you have infrastructure, if you need infrastructure, yes, you're right, that has a wider impact in terms of purchasing equipment, which benefits the wider community, but it's also a cost center for the institution. So how do you balance those social benefits as you see them?
Yes, Prof. In terms of the social benefit, like you said, yeah, that will be an expense to the school. But what happens is if they are able to get this in place, because the system is specifically built for them, what it means is since that infrastructure would be available, those who would potentially benefit from that infrastructure, like students, it makes it, they benefit from the system as well, because if the system wasn't there, such infrastructure wouldn't be available for them to benefit from. For instance, if you take the internet availability, because the system comes into play in terms of bandwidth, the school is forced to increase the bandwidth availability that they have, because there will be some hosting service that they would also undertake as part of the system. So apart from the school hosting and then running the system themselves, it benefits the immediate community as well. Example like the students who would actually make use of it. Whereas the system, in the absence of the system, maybe those resources wouldn't have been increased for them to benefit from it.
Yeah, I understand, but you can see my concern that this might work in certain sociocultural environments, but not in others. Aussie, you wanted to make a comment on that as well. Okay, so Aussie's speaker isn't working, so he made the point that service providers could be brought on board to sell their products. So I think I understand what the proposed business model is. I'm just concerned that in low resource communities, that type of thing might not work. Okay, so thank you very much indeed.
Maybe if I may expand on what Osio posted in terms of the service providers. Like if you remember, if you look at during the COVID time, students actually needed some mobile, I'm just giving an example as part of, they needed some mobile devices like dongles or packet Wi-Fi to be able to access internet anywhere, or in remote areas where the wireless from telcos couldn't reach to. So they could actually have advertised some of these products that they were selling at a cheaper price, because some governments in some countries, if I give an example like South Africa and Namibia, had actually subsidized the price, but students were not even aware where to get some of these devices. So such could have actually been posted onto the system as well. Thank you, Prof.
No, thank you very much indeed, Martin. Right, so then our last presentation of this session before the lunch break is from Edison, and it's on uses of knowledge management systems in the African context, implementation gap, challenges, and prospects.
Is a health institution which is located in Tanzania, Arusha, Tanzania, and I am in the Department of Informatics. With me here is a presentation that I want to share with you. And this presentation is basically on the issue of knowledge management systems within the African context, issues around the implementation of knowledge management systems. The first issue is the progress on implementation, and the second issue is challenges being faced when it comes to implementation and the future of it. So before I begin, I will say that this paper, the work that I'm presenting here, was sponsored by an organization known as IFAD. I was consulted as a consultant to make a presentation to them. So they supported, this work. And the motive was for the participants to be able to learn from this knowledge. As the matter of the motivation for this start, the number of issues which motivated this start to really exist. Number one, the increase of the number of ICT users. This includes the use of mobile phones across the continent. The number has increased significantly. For example, in Tanzania alone, about 80% of citizens have access to the use of mobile phones, and the number of internet users has increased as well. So this increase avails the opportunity for sharing knowledge management, sharing knowledge, knowledge management among users. And the other issue is the progressive element of information systems. There's been a steady advancement of information systems across the world, and therefore Africa, being part of the world, is also impacted. And these developments engages people and different stakeholders in the use of information systems. And therefore it provides an avenue for knowledge to be shared among users of information systems. And therefore it's a motivation for to know how this really has impacted the issue of knowledge management systems, adoption gap, et cetera, et cetera. And the last element, which also became a motivation, is that with the number of users, with development of systems, now NGOs are in a need to share the knowledge with different stakeholders within a given country, across the continent and beyond. So given the platforms which are there, and given users who are connected, then there is a need for knowledge sharing through these platforms. Now, with this background, the challenge comes because even with the presence of a number of users in the platform and the need, still indicator shows that the development is limited. And that's why we thought to engage into a start and learn about the general implementation of knowledge management systems within the continent. The following objectives were considered in this particular paper. Number one, to determine the knowledge management systems implementation gap. So the implementation gap among NGOs, because the study was initiated by NGOs. What gap is there? And number two was to determine, using the literature, challenges facing the implementation of knowledge management within Africa. This is purely based on the literature. And the third objective was to identify opportunities for enhancing learning among non-governmental organizations within Africa. And by the way, this one can also benefit other organizations, including those of the government, because they also need to share knowledge among themselves and among stakeholders. The methodology, basically this study was used a mixed approach. So both qualitative and quantitative approach were used. And so the distribution of the approach was based on the nature of the objective that was to be addressed. So in our sample, we were able to analyze online systems of 30 non-governmental organizations. And these non-governmental organizations are specializing in education advocacy. These were extracted from 121 organizations listed by the National Council of NGOs in Tanzania. So the analysis of the gap was based on Tanzanian non-government organizations. And so this analysis was descriptive in nature. It used percents to explain the gap that exists when it comes to the implementation. And with the issue of challenges, then the review of the literature was used. The review of the literature was used. The outcomes, like I said, there were 3 objectives, and therefore the outcomes are equally organized in that nature. Outcome number 1, in the first place, we wanted to know the gap, technical gap, and implementation gap. Within technological gap, the information that we have here is that, or that we obtained from the study, is that none of the 30 organizations had established the frequently asked questions page. And this is one of the key components for a knowledge management system. The page where people can quickly refer and get answers about issues which troubles them, which they think they could benefit from. So those frequently asked questions need to be analyzed and being presented in a page where people can search and get their response. So unfortunately, none of them had this. And the second new gap is that none of the 30 online facilities of the NGOs had a discussion forum. Knowledge sharing includes knowledge generation, and having a forum where people can discuss is one way to generate knowledge from different stakeholders who are engaging with the organization. So the lack of this facility was a challenge. And the third is that none of the 30 online facilities of the NGO had a page informing visitors how to access different services. The assumption is that the organization has different services that it offers, and therefore visitors will need to know how they can access or benefit from these services. But unfortunately, of all, none of them had a clear, at a page with a clear information on how such service could be accessed by different stakeholders who are in need of such services. And the other gap is that only 10% of online facilities had educational programs to educate stakeholders about different issues advocated by the organization. And also another gap is that only 3% of online facilities had case studies. Case studies are important because they're educative. They help stakeholders to understand what has happened to other people in other contexts. So they're educative. So their presence would be useful when it comes to knowledge sharing. Unfortunately, there are no cases to educate stakeholders about issues which may be similar to what they are facing in the current moment. So those were about technological gap and implementation gap. There's a significant lack of databases integrated to systems. And this would enable the system to have content which can be searched by users. So that is a limitation. But also, most contents were missing. The website, online pages were established without content. That was a challenge. And the absence of artificial intelligence tools to gather information and to allow the search of information was another observation or gap of implementation. And that requires the organizations to take care of for a proper knowledge management system. Now, the second objective was on challenges of digital knowledge management. And these are the challenges facing digital management. One, the ability of organizations to build data repository of which will allow stakeholders to search for information captured in this repository. But number two, keeping data repository up to date. That's a challenge. And the other thing is overloading users with a lot of irrelevant information. That one affects the consumption of information. And the other challenge is the issue of change management in digital knowledge management, change management. Not all people are receptive of new things, and therefore this one being of it, organizations are facing resistance within Africa. People are not using system may be established, but users are limited, and that one discourage early adopters. And the other thing is getting stakeholders to share knowledge. There are stakeholders with knowledge, but they're not ready to share. But value for system development is another issue. They wouldn't. It's difficult to spend money for something that don't believe that it brings value to you as the organization or your stakeholders. But the other challenge is responsibilities related to managing the knowledge management system. Those responsibilities require someone with technical knowledge. So not all people are technically competent. So that one is a challenge. But the other challenge is dealing with technological requirements. As it's clear, and there are a lot of development when it comes to softwares, and there are also a lot of development when it comes to hardwares. So all of these are impacting organizations in terms of the costs and knowledge required to manage them. So this is a challenge. And the other one is keeping up with the technology changes and the challenge of online data security. Security is another challenge which is there, and organizations required to devise a way to which they can deal with security so as to assure its stakeholders that they are safe whenever they are online. Now, opportunities which represent the third element includes using open source in knowledge management. They are there, and therefore they can lower the cost of implementation. But the second opportunity is engaging higher learning institutions in knowledge management agenda. They do research, and they also have students who are in the field who are doing practical work. So they can become part of projects and therefore enable organizations to develop their systems at a lower price. But the other thing is researching of relevant content. So that's an opportunity for African organizations, especially NGOs. The conclusion that I made or the SAD made is that there's a wide gap of digital knowledge implementation among NGOs in Tanzania, and this is possibly the representation of what is happening in Africa. So we need to keep up with the pace and close the gap. But the other conclusion is that digital knowledge management tools are lowly used in the effort to promote learning organizations. So we have to promote the use of digital knowledge management tools. If we have to share knowledge through online methods, online platforms, and based on the findings, the following opportunities that are highlighted. Organizations for policy advocacy should use open sources, like I said, and using collaborating with higher learning institutions is another opportunity present, and searching for new contents that will attract users, and using tools relevant to management systems so as to improve collaboration. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope it becomes useful to you. I'll be here waiting for your feedback. Thank you once again for the opportunity. May God bless you. God bless Africa.
Edison is having a problem, so he's going to have an opportunity to answer his questions later. So I'd like to share two of the questions that I plan to ask Edison. And as I highlighted in chat, I'd appreciate if you could share any questions or comments or feedback that you would like to share in chat, so I can raise those with Edison as well. So the first question I plan to ask him is, what rationale did the participating NGOs provide to explain why I understood none of them had FAQ pages, discussion forums, or directions on how to access different services on the website? Did this reflect a capacity gap, or did it reflect their attitudes towards how their target stakeholder communities consume knowledge? And then the second issue I wanted to raise with him is, what unexpected or unanticipated results did you identify? What surprised you based on this engagement with NGOs focused on education advocacy, where one had thought communications would have been given a very high value? So again, if any of you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share them in the chat, and I'll make sure Edison has an opportunity to respond. We're now coming up to lunch. So we're going to start again at 1:45 South African time. So that's in 1 hour and 15 minutes. We're going to have a very interesting presentation by Carla talking about space science and technology. And then we're going to have another 2 sessions focused, so one focused on technology enhanced learning, sharing insights from South Africa and Namibia. And then the final session of the day will be focused on social implications of technology. So I hope you all have a good break. We look forward to seeing you back in 1 hour and 15 minutes. And again, please share any proposed questions or comments or feedback on Edison's presentation in chat, and I'll make sure he gets an opportunity to respond. Gur mila magat, slán go fóill.